All right, and of course, as you know, the anticipation grows to tomorrow's developments. I mean, you think about after the president is elected, the focus will then shift to who then becomes a part of the cabinet. And the size of the cabinet in the sixth administration was seen by some as bloated. And the Centre for Development and Enterprise is calling for a significant reduction in the number of cabinet ministers, along with what it calls a fundamental overhaul of the presidency. And Bernstein, Centre for Development and Enterprise Executive Director, joins us live now. And thank you so much for your time this evening. Lots of moving parts, and a lot of people are looking to see what happens tomorrow. But beyond that, there's now going to be a focus on who then takes up their positions in cabinet. And you, as an organization, are saying that there must be a reduced cabinet. So in practical terms, what does it look like?
Well, let me start by saying that I hope that while all the negotiations are taking place as we speak, that they're not just talking about positions and power and politics, but they're also talking about priorities. We have to get the country out of the multiple crises that we're in, and it's important that the people negotiating about a new government remember that we have a country to fix. Now, this week we released the first in our series of reports on priorities for the next government and what they need to do to fix South Africa. And we're focusing on fixing the state. We all know the state is weak, it's been hollowed out by corruption, and it's not doing its job very well. And we're saying that one catalytic area on which to focus in this very large topic is to fix the cabinet and the presidency. If you have too many people in a cabinet, it's hard to get everyone focused on your reform priorities, it's hard to stick to your priorities, and it's hard to make the cabinet accountable. So we're saying even though we might have coalition government, we need a much smaller cabinet, around 20, 21 people, in order to focus on the most important issues and to make it easier to take the right decisions for South Africa. Most important of all, we have to get the best possible people we can from each party into the cabinet, and the president has the right, the constitutional right, to appoint two people who do not come from parliament. And we're calling very strongly for him to, when we have a president, for him to use those two positions to bring excellent talent and experience and expertise into the cabinet, which has been sorely lacking in that department for so long.
And I'm going to get to some of what you've said as well, but I'd like us to stay with these negotiations that are currently taking place. Given this particular climate and some of the leaders that have already pronounced, which positions they're eyeing as they go into some of these discussions, how then does the president begin to accommodate all of these demands?
Well, the president has to lead. That's what the job is all about. He has many positions and patronage that he can allocate to different parties. They don't all have to be, the central part of the cabinet. So there are lots of deputy ministers, there are all sorts of places. But the critical issue and what the new president will be judged on is, does he deliver for the country? So he's going to have to be firm on the way in which they divide things up. So we're saying quality matters, and hoping that this will be borne in mind because the country's in deep trouble.
Quality does indeed matter, especially when you even listen to the Public and Service Administration, for example, talking about the professionalization of the public sector. And what does this then look like, especially against the backdrop of some of what we've seen that is worrying there. But interestingly, your report also touches on the presidency. You've touched on it a little bit. And I wonder then, what does it look like if they reorganize their priorities? Because also, this is a sixth administration that was also looked at by some who are saying that too many positions are now going towards being in the presidency.
Well, in the sixth administration, a lot of decisions were avoided. There was division within the ruling party. We all know that. And so often when you couldn't get it through a department or that minister, you'd create something in the presidency. And we're saying this is not a good way to run the country. So we're saying there are a number of ministers in the presidency that should be downgraded or abolished, and the functions should be handled in different departments, and that's what needs to be considered when you're appointing ministers and your senior officials. So we're saying, for example, that the Department of Small Business Development should be closed down. This is a very important area, but we should stop just talking about this. There's a lot of money spent in this area in the government every single year, but we never see any results. We're very much in favor of supporting small entrepreneurs, black entrepreneurs, but we think we should give it to the experts. It's the people in the private sector, the funds that know how to support small firms and help them grow. And we could do this in a competitive way. So that's just one example of a department we think has not worked and should be sort of gotten rid of. But there are others as well.
Yeah, and I wonder then, as we round up our conversation, how much then of this particular state, as you say, we need to fix it, how much of its ability is also going to be tested when it comes to delivering public service programs, for example, looking at the impact that corruption has had?
Well, that's why strengthening the rule of law is one of our top priorities. We will be coming shortly with a report on how to get the NPA back to top efficiency, because it's clearly not. How to deal with the independence and quality of the judiciary. So that's two catalytic actions. We can't do everything. We've really focused on what should the new government do in, say, the first 6 months to get things going, to send bold signals to the country, to citizens, to investors, to the civil service, that this is a whole new approach. We're very serious about reform, and we're going to deepen it. And we're serious about having quality people. So next week, we're releasing a document on what we're calling mission-critical jobs. And that's below the cabinet, the directors general, the CEO of state-owned enterprises, the deputy DGs, and so on. We're saying identify about 100, 150 top positions in the civil service, and let's make sure that we have really excellent people in as a first big step in professionalizing the civil service and getting excellence back into the civil service, centered around the reform priorities. We need to have fewer priorities. We don't have any, really, in many respects. It's kind of whatever sort of takes the ministers and the president's sort of attention and imagination. We need to be ruthless in focusing on growth and jobs, fixing the state, fixing the rule of law, and getting people into employment as quickly as possible.
You're the second guest tonight to talk about how critical the next 6 months is going to be. So let's see then, in terms of focus, what becomes some of those areas, and looking forward to this strengthening of the NPA to top efficiency, some of the proposals there. But thank you so much, Anne, for your time. Appreciate it as always. That was Anne Bernstein, Centre for Development and Enterprise Executive Director.